because I'm told that Galerowitz is actually Brooklyn, Greenpoint, on December 4th, 1916. I was the third of four children. I have two older sisters uh, and one younger brother. My parents were Jewish immigrants who had come to the United States in the early 1900s from what was then Russia, but is really part of Poland. I never really was able to establish exactly what point, where they came, what part of Europe they came from. They didn't know each other when they came to the United States. My father was 10 or 15 years older than my mother, and he came, I suspect, mainly because of political reasons. He was supposed to be drafted or go in the army or something like that, and I don't really know too much about his background. Apparently, early on in life, he decided that he was never going to work for anybody. So he somehow or other made a living there, being some kind of a small tradesperson, and that's what he did for his entire life. His father, the only thing I really know is his father was in the cigarette paper business, because I'm told that Galerowitz, a word something like that, means cigarette paper in Russian, though when I checked it out, it didn't work out that way. My mother came, I think, more or less for economic reasons. She had been preceded by two brothers, and then she came, and in the early years when she first got here, she lived with her brother, I think, and sister-in-law, and she was working in the garment trades. She was kind of active in the union. Neither one of them were really progressive people, though my father basically was progressive. I mean, when we were little kids, he used to tell us about the Bolsheviks were good guys.
What year did he come to America?
He came here about 1912 or something like that. And I'll never forget the story he told us why he never became a citizen. He said he had applied for citizenship sometime during the Second World War. I guess just about the time I was born. And about that time,
First World War.
The First World War. And about that time, some socialists were elected in New York. And instead of letting them take power, they found some excuse to kick them out of the legislature. So he said, what's the point of being a citizen? If you elect the people you want, they can't stay in anyhow. And by the time I was born, when he first came to the United States, apparently he worked as a peddler. Then he got a grocery store. And apparently during the First World War, he made quite a bit of money and got out of the grocery business in the early 1920s. Then he opened a restaurant and lost all his money. And after that, he had a grocery store. Then he had a chicken store in Brownsville and in Washington Heights. And that's basically, my father was just a really nice guy. And my mother was a very devoted woman, had children and everything, and she was a very nice person too. But they weren't particularly religious. My father did go to synagogue on high holidays, and my mother kept a kosher house, but there was no real ideological Jewishness involved in that, behind that. I mean, the earliest recollections I have, I went to school, grade school. I guess I was a fairly good student, but I had a lot of problems, I guess, with deportment, and I didn't make the rapid advanced classes in New York City. I don't know if you remember that. Besides which, I was early. My mother lied about my age, and she actually got me. She said I was 5 when I was 4 or something like that, and I was in school a year early. So actually, I got out of junior high school when I was about 13 and a half. By that time, we had moved to Washington Heights, and that's where we lived from 1929 on.
In your earlier childhood, what area did you live in the city?
Well, we lived in, the ones I remember best is we lived in Brownsville.
At the age of what? Up to what age?
Well, we lived in Brownsville until I was 12 and a half.
What kind of a community was Brownsville?
Well, Brownsville was a working class Jewish area, and I don't really have any clear recollections of being involved in anything politically. I do have some vague recollections of going to some Sacco and Vanzetti meeting, now that you mention it. At that time, I was living in the Bronx. We lived in the Bronx, too, for a while, before we moved to Brownsville. And but I don't really have any strong recollections of what kind of influences I was involved with. Until
In the streets, let's say in Brownsville, what sort of a community was it?
Well, I guess in that sense there was a very close relationship with all the other kids. I remember we lived right across the street from this athletic field where they used to play soccer. Something had to do with Jefferson High School. I don't remember the name of the street now. But, we were busy playing games, and I remember reading at a very early age and going to the library and exchanging books with the other kids and stuff like that, playing cards with the kids and things along that line. By the time we moved to Washington Heights, and I was about 13, from that point on, I was getting a lot of political discussions. I guess by the time I was about 12 or 13, and we moved to Washington Heights, my older sisters had become progressive, more, radical as a matter of fact. And I guess this influenced me, and I remember arguing about religion and about politics with the kids in the street corner up in Washington Heights, which was also a middle-class area. It wasn't as Jewish an area as Brownsville, but there was a lot of Jewish people there. It was kind of a mixed area. And then when I got ready to go to high school, I probably made the biggest mistake of my life. I took the test to go to Townsend Harris High School. Townsend Harris High School, if you're not from New York, was a prep school for City College. It was a 3-year high school, which if you graduated from Townsend Harris, you automatically went into City College, which was kind of difficult to get into. And almost all along, almost my entire life, see, I was the oldest boy in the family. My father's ambition for me was that I should be a doctor. I mean, what else? And I guess one of the things I did by getting kicked out of school eventually and not making it, not in his lifetime, was that I got kicked out of school and I never did get to be a doctor.
Why did you get kicked out of school?
Well, I'm going to get to that. That was political reasons. That was the beginning of my political career at City College in New York. Anyway, I went to Townsend Harris, and Townsend Harris was at 23rd and Lexington, and I lived up in Washington Heights. So it was a good hour's ride on a subway up and back. And I almost lost all contact with the kids that I was going to school, the neighborhood kids in Washington Heights. And I never really made any friends in Townsend Harris, because they lived all over the city. It wasn't a neighborhood school. It was kids that came from all over the city. There was only about 1,000 students in the whole school.
You had to get a certain grade in order to get in there.
There was a competitive examination to get into Townsend Harris. And apparently I made it, but I really wasn't a good student. I just barely got through. As a matter of fact, I flunked a couple of courses. And I guess I was a little bit of a rebel. I remember this French teacher wanting us to memorize a poem. And I said I wasn't going to do that. What the hell good? How was that going to help me learn any French? And it was purely there were no trade classes or anything like that. I can't think of the word. Academic courses. And prepared you for City College. And when I got through, I immediately went into City College. I was about 16 and a half. And when I got to City College, I guess that's where
What year was that?
Actually, I got to City College, I think, in the spring of 1933. And the minute I got there, things were really hopping in City College. At that time, City College in New York was the leading radical school in the country.
Before we go with the city college, the college part, what was the condition of your family,
Economically?
surroundings economically during the period when you were growing up before you went through high school or
Well,
thereabouts?
basically, we were doing fairly well, considering. My father, I said, had done quite well up until the time he got into this restaurant, lost all his money. But my uncle, my mother's brother, turned out to be quite wealthy. He owned a big chain of grocery stores, and he used to be very helpful to my father. And like when I wanted a job, I went to work in one of his markets and stores when I was 11, 12 years old on Saturdays and things like that. And my father was able to get into these different kind of grocery stores. And in 1929, just before the Depression, he opened up a chicken store in Washington Heights. I know, you know what a chicken store is? You know, that's kosher chickens.
Live chickens.
No, they're not live. No, in New York City, it doesn't work that way. He would go to the market in the morning and buy chickens that were killed by a sheikhut, you know, and brought back to the store. And people would come and buy it, and they would pluck them and clean them and so on and so forth and take them home. So they weren't live chickens. I don't know if this is true in other parts of the country.
As a child, we had live chickens and the guy cut their throats.
Well, this was not live, but they were fresh killed chickens. He had to get up real early in the
Ritually
morning.
slaughtered.
Pardon me? Yeah, ritually slaughtered. That he'd get up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and go to the market and get the chicken, bring it to the store, and have to sell his chickens that day, and next day get new chickens. And so during the Depression, you know, things were were tight for us, but we really were not in a bad economic situation. You know, we weren't starving. We always ate chicken. There was always chicken to eat, and so things were going along fairly well. I mean, we weren't wealthy or anything like that, but there was enough to take care of the family. And
Did you spend in your youth? Did you spend your summers in New York City, or did you go away to any kind of camps? Or
well, not really. I never went to any camps. The earliest I can recall was maybe about 1933 or something, getting a job in a kachalain up in New York. I was about 15.
Kachalain meaning in
You
Yiddish,
do your own
cook
cooking.
alone.
No, you cook your own.
Yeah.
These are places up in the Catskills where people rent the room and there's a communal kitchen. And they also had a farm, so I was working on the farm and they had a little store there and I ran the store. And having worked in my father's store, I got to be a chicken flicker, chicken plucker. Well, I mean, that was a very good trade. Yeah, hard work, but that was, so a couple of summers before I went to Spain, I got jobs up in the Catskills as a chicken plucker. These big hotels that were kosher places had people, you know, used to have kill their own chickens, or sheikh would come and kill their own chickens, and then you had to prepare them for the kitchen. So that was a job as a chicken plucker. And
Go back to college.
no, and I also now this was later on well, this is all actually while I was going to school. Before I went to college, I don't think I had gone away. I think this was about the time I got to be about 16 that I started going away. Before that, we never went away. We took a vacation once or twice that I can remember. We went to some place up in the mountains, but basically, we go visit my uncle who had a place in Rockaway. I can remember doing that and stay there for a few days. But my family wasn't wealthy enough to do things like that. And camps was something that was completely foreign to them. So anyway, I started going to City College in 1933, and there was a big struggle at that point about the ROTC. There was already a campaign at City College in New York, and we had a president called Frederick B. Robinson, who in 1933 attacked a bunch of students who were demonstrating against the ROTC with an umbrella. And that got to be quite a fiasco, and a whole bunch of students were expelled. Many of them who later on became fairly well-known left-wing people, Adam Lappin, Joseph Starobin, a couple of others whose names I can't remember. So I was just beginning to get involved in the campaign, and about that time I joined the Young Communist League, the YCL. I was about 17 and I joined the YCL, and the following year, in the fall of 1934, we had a really big fracas at City College. There was a big propaganda deal about a bunch of Italian fascist students coming to New York City. They had a big meeting for them in the Yankee Stadium, and obviously this was a period of time when there was the beginning of a lot of struggle against fascism. And what they did is they invited them to come down to City College. And not only did they come to City College, but they invited them to come to the Freshmen's Assembly, which was required that all the freshmen had to come to the assembly on Thursdays at noon. So we had the student body president was one of our guys, a guy named Eddie Alexander. Maybe I don't remember his first name. Anyway, we had it ended up in a big riot, and we ended up with a big struggle at the school. A whole bunch of us got expelled, including myself. And this campaign continued on for quite a while at City College. A lot of publicity about it, and that was the beginning of my political career. I continued, after I got expelled from City College, I still continued active for a period of time with the student movement. That was the beginning of the National Student Union. Oh, that's right, I went back to school again. I got reinstated and I flunked out. I forgot about that. I got reinstated, and instead of paying any attention to school, I became very active in the YCL. We had a YCL chapter at City College. We rented a building that we called the Karl Marx House. We must have had a couple of hundred members of the YCL there. Instead of paying any attention to school, I didn't do any schoolwork and I flunked out. And that period of time, there was an organization called the National Student League, which was the left wing, and there was the American Student Union, which was kind of a socialist group. And but we cooperated. It was the first student strike in April of 1934. That national student strike against war and fascism. There was a big campaign about Maury Shappies, who got kicked out of City College about that time. He was one of the supporters. Next year, I went to CC camp for a while. I was kicked out of school, and I wasn't quite sure what to do, so I signed up and I went to a CCC camp, Civilian Conservation Corps. You remember that? And I spent about 6 months at a camp out in
Just tell us a little bit about the CCC. What was it? What kind of an organization was it?
Well, the Civilian Conservation Corps was an organization set up by President Roosevelt to get unemployed kids off the streets. And the idea was that you would go and you would do some public service work somewhere. It was pretty well run by the Army, because when I first joined it, they sent us to Camp Dix, which was an Army camp in New Jersey for kind of orientation, and then we went out to Glacier National Park in Montana, and we were working there all summer long on different projects in the park, building things, cleaning up, getting ready for public, and so on and so forth. They paid you $30 a month in room and board, but it was kind of a militaristic situation. You wore uniforms, but there was no actual military training. And there was a lot of people that felt that it was kind of a militaristic operation, but on the other hand, to a large extent, it was socially a very good thing, because it got a lot of kids into healthy situations, out of the streets, away from crime, and they made a few bucks, and even learned a few, you were able to learn a little bit about a trade and so on and so forth. Not too much, because most of the work was manual work and so on. So I spent about 6 months with that, and then I went back to school again. I came back because I was going to go back to school, and I guess I get mixed up. I guess I got readmitted at that point. I guess I got expelled, went to CC camp, got readmitted, and in 1935, and then I was very active at the school for that whole year. Had a little part-time job and was going to school and doing a lot of activity, political work. And most of our work was revolved around war and fascism. I was a member of the YCL. I think somewhere along that time I probably even joined the Communist Party. I'm not 100% sure exactly when, but I think I did. Because before I went to Spain, I was already a member. And then in the summer of 1936, I was working in one of these one of the jobs as a chicken plucker, and the war started. And there were a lot of very progressive young people there. I remember we used to sit around and talk about it, and everybody was very, concerned about what was going on in Spain. And when I got back in the summer of '36, I think at that point in time, I sort of was already finished with school. I decided I wasn't going to be messing around with school anymore. I started looking for a job, and was active in the neighborhood YCL. I remember we used to have street corner meetings, and I used to speak at street corner meetings. And one of the things you were asking me about my family's reaction, my father used to sneak out to listen to me speak, but he wouldn't he kind of was proud of me doing it, but he never admitted it. And as I said, my two older sisters had both been, were, you know, kind of progressive too. By this time, they had moved out of the house. They had both gotten married, and I was still living at home. And as soon as I could, you know, as soon as I heard about people wanting to go, being recruited to go to Spain, I signed up. I think I asked early on in about January of, you know, of '37. As soon as I heard about it, and to me it was the most natural thing in the world for me to go to Spain as part of the struggle against war and fascism that I've been involved with since 1933 in the United States. It was you know, just a continuation of the same struggle, and I never had any doubts about my wanting to go, and though I made a big mistake, as soon as I wanted to go, at that point in time I wasn't 21 yet. So in order to get a passport, I had to get my father's permission. So I go up to my father and I ask him to sign. He goes through the roof. My father was absolutely opposed to militarism. When we were kids, he wouldn't let us join the Boy Scouts because they wore uniforms. Anything that had to do with militarism, anything, he had 100% opposed. So I just had to back off. And then later on, I discovered that I could probably go by using a phony name. So I finally made arrangements to leave a little later, and I left in, I guess, July 4th of 1937 or something like that. I left for Spain, but I went on a phony name. I used the name of Mike Goodwin. And that was my name in
With your own
Spain.
passport?
No, I used Mike Goodwin's passport. Somebody I know whose name was Charlie Goodwin. I knew it his date was. It's a real easy thing. You get a hold of somebody's birth certificate who's about the same age as you are, and his name was Charlie Goodwin, but his birth certificate said Mike Goodwin. And so I got a passport in his name, and I signed up. I don't really remember too much of the details about signing up and so on, but I went to the right people and I made the arrangements, and we left early in July of 1937, I think, on the President Roosevelt. There were about 13 or 14 of us on board the ship. I think Pete Smith was like in charge of us. And I don't really remember too much about Cone Haber was one of the guys that was on board. He had a different name here in what the hell did he call himself here?
Did he die?
Klein, yeah, he died. Tina,
Oh, Tina Kleiman.
Kleiman, yeah, that's the guy, Kleiman.
Kleiman,
Yeah, he went. He was on the ship with us, and that was a nice trip. I really enjoyed that. It was the summertime. I was 20 years old. We were past. I'd never been on anything like that. There was. We were third class, but even third class was pretty jazzy with dancing and orchestra and other people, you know, young women and other passengers, and so it was a nice 7 or 8 day crossing, and we were doing all this secret crap. You couldn't talk to each other. We had I mean, I'm sure we stood out like a sore thumb on board the people on the ship, but then we got to Le Havre, and we ended up going to some hotel, and only spent 2 or 3 days, I think, in Paris. They put us up at some hotel. I remember we ate at some big communal dining hall. And I think the thing that I really found so interesting there is that the international language was Yiddish. You could talk to people from all over the world in Yiddish. Not that my Yiddish was that good, but it was good enough. And, you know, we did meet people from all over the world. We went to the Paris World's Fair. I remember doing that. And finally, we got word to take off and go to Spain. And they put us on one of these dime store novel things. You were teamed up with people, and you were supposed to follow somebody else, and somebody else was supposed to follow somebody else, and you took a train from Paris to someplace, and you got off there, and you met somebody in a cafe, and you followed some. I mean, it was a whole series of steps like that till we ended up in some place in a barn in southern France, where we stayed for a day or two, and then all of a sudden there were 70, 80 people there. and they came around with some buses, 5 o'clock one evening, and okay, let's go. We got on the buses. They drove us to someplace, and we got out and we started walking. And I remember at first we were walking through flatland. I remember a couple of places we were at, there were cars driving by. So as soon as anybody saw a headlight, we all had to dive. We didn't stay on the road. We were off the road. And we finally got into the hills. And I guess there was I think there were 2 guides with us. It must have been, I guess they gave us alpargatas to wear, and we carried our shoes because we all had bought bought heavy shoes from the States with us. And we started walking, and we walked, and we walked, and we walked, and it was a pretty rugged walk up and across the mountains in a pitch black night. And by morning, by daylight, we were way on the top, and the guy said, "That's Spain. We're in Spain." We didn't have any special incidents, but there were a couple of times, when we had to be very careful. They said we were going right by some guard stations or something like that. And when we got to Spain, we finally walked down. I can't remember the name of the little town up there that you got to. I've seen the name. And we got on a train finally and headed for Albacete. We went through Barcelona. I don't think
Did you go to Figueres?
That was the name of the place. Figueres was the place. It was like a fort.
It's a fort.
Yeah. I don't remember how much.
Really.
I don't remember how much time we spent there.
A couple days.
And I know we didn't stop at Barcelona. We stopped at Valencia. We changed trains. Because I remember a few of us went down to the beach. Because this was in July. It was when we got to Spain. When we got to France, it was like Bastille Day. I think July 14th or something like that. And eventually we got to Albacete, and we were put into the Mackenzie Papineau Battalion, which was in training at that time. And I was assigned to a machine gun company. Milton Herndon was our section leader. I think Joe Dallett was the commander of the company. And Merriman was the battalion commander at that time. I don't remember who was the commissar. Maybe George Watt, I'm not sure, something like this. So I trained, we trained, we were out doing maneuvers every day, marching and flopping and infiltrating, all this kind of stuff. And Albacete was a very interesting little town, and he had really good relations with the people there. My recollection, my feelings were that they were real happy that we were there, and of course this is true, of course, all the way through. I think coming down on the train too, I think, wherever we were, as soon as anybody knew that we were internationals coming in, you got really big welcomes and stuff like that. And I had an opportunity to go to Madrid before we left to go to up to the front on a 1-day or 2-day pass. And I got real lucky. I used to play poker, and I won a lot of money. And I think when I ended up going to Madrid, I had a couple of thousand pesetas. I checked into the Hotel Florida. Nothing was too. I had plenty of money.
Nothing was too good for you.
And that was a great experience.
Was Madrid still being shelled?
Oh yes, it was being shelled continuously, and it didn't seem to bother anybody. You walked along the Gran Via. The telephone building was just a couple of blocks down, and that was, that was like their target. And it was sporadic. It wasn't, a real intensive kind of shelling, but there was shelling going on.
In Florida, where the correspondents stayed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I ran into Hemingway there. I vaguely remember that. I guess it was the most expensive hotel I had, but I had lots of money, so that was no problem. It was the only one that had hot water, incidentally. I remember somebody coming up and using my room to take a bath. I remember sitting down to dinner there, this beautiful dining room with all this snowy, tableware and silver service. And they brought out this thing of garbanzos. That was it.
That was the whole meal.
That was the whole meal. But they had these little kids that were running around that were really streetwise kids. They knew anything. Whatever you want, they could get you. remember them taking us to some pool houses, they took us to some private house where we got a good meal. And so that was really a really great experience. And then we went up to the front, and when we got to the Aragon front, the first thing I remember is they took us out to this olive grove where we laid out, and at that point in time, the Quinto, Belchite and Quinto offensive had just finished, and the Lincoln Washington, whatever they called it, had just come back, and they were in the same olive grove as we were. I mean, they were pretty decimated, and I guess they decided that they were going to transfer some guys from our outfit to the Lincoln Wash, and I was one of the ones that was transferred. And I guess part of the reason was Milton Herndon and Joe Dollar were a bunch of chicken shit.
They were what?
Chicken shit guys, you know. And I don't remember the details, but I was not one of their favorite people. I just didn't see, some of the things. I can't remember details. Yeah, just a general feeling, that this was strict discipline and I think saluting, all this kind of junk that you would expect. That I didn't expect in this kind of an army. And so I got transferred to the Lincoln Washington, and again I was put in the machine gun company. And I'm not sure. I think I vaguely remember Freddie Keller being in it. I think at that time Milt Wolfe was the commander of this machine gun company. I can't remember who my squadron leaders were or anything like that. I just don't have the recollection. And that was really funny because we were laying. So I got transferred over to the Lincoln Washington, and we were laying there not doing anything. And the Mackenzie Bapano Battalion were out doing maneuvers. They were getting up 6 o'clock in the morning, bugles, and out marching and training. And we were doing nothing except laying around listening to people gripe. I can still remember Gabby, one of the biggest gripers, Gabby Rosenstein, who just left here, griping about some of the things that went on and during the
You mean the kind of unnecessary discipline thing?
Well, no, I think it was more about mistakes and tactics and things like that, which the kind of things that are almost inevitable to happen in this kind of a struggle. I don't think there was anything like that. That was my recollection, that some of the actions weren't as well organized as they should have. The reinforcements didn't show up in time. The equipment didn't come in time. The food maybe didn't come in time. All these kind of things that's almost inevitable. No matter what you had, if you didn't find something to gripe, you'd find something to gripe about no matter what. And so the first action I was involved in was in Fuentes de Ebro. I think we stayed in this town for a while, and we went and stayed in some big building. I don't remember for a few days. I can't remember why. And one of the guys that I went across with was a guy named Ed Flegel. Flegel, F-L-I-E-G-E-L. And I don't know whatever happened to him, because I ran into him here in Los Angeles somewhere in the 50s or 60s. He was a drywall contractor. And he got to be the mailman of for some reason or other. He was from LA, I think. Somehow I remember him in this, coming around with the mail while just before we went into Fuentes del Ebro. And so I was involved in the Fuentes del Ebro campaign. Being a part of the machine gun company, we didn't really go over the top. We had the position and we were giving them cover fire, and the guys went out, and the tanks, the Russian tanks came over. I mean, this was should have been a successful campaign, and I'm convinced there was some kind of sabotage involved in it. Because as far as my experience, we had more equipment then than we ever had before. Though things didn't go according to plan. Like when we got out there, the first thing that was going to happen is the planes were going to come over and bomb the shit out of them. They were going to be a big artillery barrage, which none of it came through. Then the tanks came and attacked, and there were Spanish troops, I think, mostly on the tanks. I don't know whether they were from the 24th Battalion or from which outfit. And, you could see Zaragoza right up ahead of you. And that was our objective, was to take Zaragoza. And we got absolutely nowhere. We got nowhere. and a lot of casualties. I can't remember names of people. The only I remember clearly was that I heard, that Joe Dallett and Milton Herndon got killed, leading an attack, which I suspect was they shouldn't have been doing. And so then, after the first day or so in the attack, I settled down to a kind of a trench warfare situation. We just sat there and we would help. We stayed in the lines for maybe 10 or 12 days, not too long, and there wasn't too much going on that I can recall after the first couple of days. We didn't get anywhere at all. We didn't even move up. The people that went out all came back, and so they pulled us out of the lines, and we went back to Albacete, I think. And I don't know how long we were there, and had an opportunity to go to Madrid again. This time I went because I needed some dental work. That was the best thing I ever decided. Because again, I ended up with a lot of money, and I went to Madrid for a couple of days, and that was again a great experience. When I came back, we headed for the Aragon again soon afterwards, and I don't remember now, but I have a very beautiful recollection of being in some town that we stayed at for about a week or two before we went into the action. It must have been around Christmas, because I remember New Year's Eve is when we started. We went up to the what we call the North Pole, and we were in this town. It was people were getting ready for the winter. They were slaughtering pigs. They had a big dinner for us. The most friendly people and one of the greatest experiences that I can recall, and the feeling about the relationship between us and whatever this town was. I don't know if you know the name of the town. I never was able to figure it out. And finally, my recollection is it's New Year's Eve. I think we moved up and we stayed in some barns or somewhere for a day or two. And about midnight or something, they came and got us. And they said, off we go. And we took up, it was a long march, cold, there was some snow on the ground. Carrying those fucking Maxim machine guns was not easy because it was, rough ground. And we got up to some point, we took up positions overlooking a big valley. And this was a purely defensive thing. I think that already cut off the Teruel, and this was a retreat. I think this was somewhere north of Teruel. Or maybe at that point in time is when we had been in the tunnel for a while. I'm not sure. There was one point in time we took up positions in a railroad tunnel, and we stayed there for a few days. But I think that was after we pulled out, before we went to, we were at this position, which we called North Pole, for about 10 days. Then we pulled out, we stayed some time in this railroad tunnel, and then we went into Teruel itself. And I took up a position, the machine gun company I was in a textile factory right on the outskirts of Teruel. We were somewhere close to the Crazy House, and we were lucky. The big shelling and stuff was, I think, the English battalion, who were north of us. I mean, on what I remember, on our right-hand side. The town was to our left, and I remember we had the opportunity to go into town and wander around. It was pretty much deserted. There were a few people living there. People were organizing things, coming around wearing these outlandish clothes and things that they found in some of the deserted houses. I remember Dykstra getting killed. I mean, this guy there was a trench between our building and another building.
How do you spell that?
He was I think that's his name. He was the battalion commander. I think it's DykstrA, I'm not sure. There was this trench between the two buildings. In order to come to our building, there was one point you had to pass in between two buildings. And so a trench was dug so that you can go down and go underneath and come back up again. And this guy decided he wasn't going to go screw around with a trench. He just walked across. And sure enough, he got blasted. He was I remember a guy who had a lot of military training, and he was the battalion commander at that point. Of the Lincoln Washington. No, this is the Lincoln Washington. I was out of the MacPaps from the, from before Fuentes del Ebro. So then I don't know, we pulled out of there after a while. We were really lucky. The group I was with, we were really not getting shelled badly or anything. There was no specific attacks directly on us. And we must have been there 2, 3, 4 weeks or something like that in that textile factory. And this was right on the front line. And we pulled out of there and we went to someplace, kilometer 19, I vaguely remember, where there was a whole bunch of fortifications, and we stayed there a few days. I don't think we took up again a position. This was kind of, I think, a reserve position at kilometer 19 because the fascists were really counterattacking and they were supposed to, so we were like in a secondary position. And I think after a while, we weren't really involved in any more frontline businesses. We pulled out, we got on a train, we headed back for the central area. We got to Valencia. We were in the yard in Valencia. Nobody was supposed to leave. I know myself and a couple of other guys, and we climbed the wall or something. I don't remember now. We got out, and we got some food somewhere. We went to a whorehouse, and we came back, and the train turned around and went back to Belchite again. We got back to Belchite, and we took up a position in the front line in an olive grove. They put us in this olive grove. About that time, I got a really bad infection in my finger, in my left thumb. Really bad infection. So I went to the doctor. This was a couple of days, about the time we got back. I went to the doctor, and since we were sitting in this olive grove and nothing was going on, he decided to treat me. So he built a fire, and because I was getting blood poisoning, I was all red up my arm and underneath my arm, and so he put hot compresses all over my arm, and he lanced it. I mean, this was before we had all these miracle drugs, of course. I don't remember the name of the doctor, but there was a little tent, and I was in the tent. Instead of sending me back to one of the hospitals, he decided to do that. And so at that point, I wasn't able to really use my hand too well. So they made me the first aid man in the company, and so I was still attached to this machine gun company. They made me first aid man, and I didn't realize at the time if he'd have sent me back, I could have maybe not gotten captured a couple of days later. But he didn't send me back, and so we're laying around this olive grove, and as a matter of fact, I was up playing cards the night before. I played cards till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Again, I was lucky and I won. And we went to sleep about 4 or 5 o'clock, or whatever it is. They wake us up and say, let's go. So we started marching down the road, and we see stragglers coming the other way. We couldn't figure out what was going on. And just about daylight, we get to a series of hills on the left of the road. The right was really flat. On the left of the road, there was some series of hills with a monastery up on the hill. So we get orders. I think at this point in time, Dave Reese was our battalion commander. So we get orders to go and take up positions.
What battle was that?
This was
Still there?
this was March 10th, 1938. This was the second day of the beginning of the breakthrough. The fascists had just made their big attack the day before, had opened their offensive to cut through to the sea the day before. We didn't know this. We were laying around this olive grove. So we get ordered to take up positions on this hill. So one of the infantry companies is told to go up somewhere, and we were told to go and take up positions to give them cover. Just about this time, it's going to get this daylight. We no sooner get there when all hell breaks loose. It's just about daybreak, and these infantry guys really got pinned down there. I don't know what happened, and they couldn't move. So we were ordered to take up positions on this hill to give them cover. We were like in a series of small hills in front of this big hill where the monastery was. So somewhere around 9 o'clock, we get orders to fall back. 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe later. The only guy I clearly remember is Max Schufer, the guy we used to call Rabbit. Or his name was Irving Rabinowitz there, but his real name is Max Schufer. And so we fall back, we're taking a machine gun with us, we get back to where the battalion headquarters was. And we learn that earlier that morning, the entire battalion command had gotten wiped out. A bunch of them were standing around, and a shell fell right in the middle of them and wiped out the entire battalion staff. The entire battalion had already fallen back. So we get to this place where the monastery was, this hill, and there's not a soul around. I guess, or maybe somebody was around that told us this. I don't know how we knew about it. So we decide we're going to go down the hill and try to make our way back to the lines. But up there we could see on the other side of the road, there are already fascist tanks there. So we get down to the bottom of the hill. By this time the fascist tanks are around the hill, and they got us spotted. They're blasting away at us. So we decided, well, we're going to just have to abandon them. You know how heavy these Maxim machine guns. I know I was carrying a carriage, somebody else was. So we decided we'll just drop everything and just run like hell, and maybe we'll make it, because they had a bunch of barrancas, like natural trenches, you know, that were all around that area. Because except for this hill, everything else, the series of hills, everything else was pretty flat. So we get to the bottom of the hill and we make a run for the barrancas. I mean, I remember now, four of us end up together in this one barranca. We ran like hell. I mean, it was shooting at us, but we got there. These were pretty deep, so we were had pretty good cover. It's really funny. Later on, I discovered, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, but when we were in, after I was a prisoner, when we got to San Pedro de Cardenas, which I'll get to in a minute, I think Norm Dorland, who had been on the battalion staff, said that what happened is that we were ordered to go to some kilometer, to go on this road from Belchite to someplace, and go to a certain kilometer number, and we were supposed to take up positions facing the fascists on the left of the road and the English battalion on the right of the road. So Dave Reese, when he got to that position, looks and sees these hills. So he decides he's going to take up position on the hills. So we go forward maybe another half a kilometer. So we're on the left side of the road, and the English battalion is on the right side of the road, about a half a kilometer or a kilometer back of us. So they had no trouble at all going around us, coming in back of us, then going around and back of the English battalion. I mean, that's what Dorland's story was, and I assume it was true. So we get into this series of trenches, and we started heading back in the direction it looks like it's heading towards Belchite, because we figure that's where the rest of the battalion had fallen back to. And I can't remember the names of the people, but there were four of us in there. The only guy I remember is Rabbit. And we keep going, and then finally we decide, well, we're sort of, instead of heading towards Belchite, the damn things are running towards the other way. Again, there was a series of hills along there too. So we decide, well, maybe we better take a run for it and see if we can get out of here and run. So we decide, well, two will go first and then two will go after. So the first two that went, I wasn't one of the first two. No sooner did they get out of the thing that all hell broke loose. Apparently there was a series of hills that the fascists were on, and they just shot off. So in 2 seconds they were back. One of them had gotten a bullet hole through the cheek of his ass. I mean, he wasn't serious because it was just a fleshy part. So I still had the first aid kit. I didn't have a rifle. I had a first aid kit. I bandaged him up, and all we had was we had no hand grenades. I mean, that was one of the things about the whole thing. When we went up to this, we had no hand grenades. All we had was rifles and machine guns. And we had no anti-aircraft guns. When we were heading back from the positions we were in towards the to where the monastery was, the fascists were coming over us so low in their planes, they reach out of their sides with little bombs. I could see them. I'm laying on the ground watching the son of a bitches. Because again, there were little trenches there, they'd come over, so we would dive. There was absolutely no protection whatsoever. So we decided we better sit there. By this time, it's maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we decided we'll sit there till dark, and then we'll head back. And sometime or other during that afternoon, a patrol of Spanish soldiers come by and see us, and we had been talked about what we would do. I guess whether we decided it out, we surrendered. I mean, we had nothing to fight with. We're certainly not in a position to fight. So they took us prisoner. They took us back to these hills, and I tell you, I never saw so much equipment in all the time I was in Spain. You can't believe what they had there. This was all on burros. The equipment, guns, ammunition, tents, manpower, in the fucking hills, just loaded. So I don't know, we were lucky that, I guess this was a Spanish troop. I don't know, the story we got from different people. I'm not sure. It's not one. Couple of guys later on said that they were stopped by a couple of Moors, and the Moors were having a big argument whether they should kill them or not. And they said they were from Hollywood. So the younger Moor was so impressed by Hollywood, he said, "No, let's not kill him." So they did. They took him prisoner. I'm sure plenty of guys were killed, that were at this point. And I mean, this was the beginning of the retreats. So we were captured right off the bat, March 10th, 1938. They took us back to some place. They put us in a freight train. I don't know. We remember seeing a whole bunch of Italian troops. Wherever we went to, where we were going to get on the freight train, they were going to take us someplace that was just loaded with Italian troops. And some Italian guy came over who spoke English, who had been brought up in New York. And we had a long talk with him. I can't remember details about it, but I remember that very clearly. And they put us in this freight train. They took us to some bull ring, and I think a town called Long Green or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. And we were in this bull ring. There must have been about a dozen Americans, and I don't know if there were too many other foreigners. There were a lot of Spanish prisoners. And we must have stayed in that bull ring for almost 3 weeks. Because this was March 10th, about the beginning of April, they hauled us off to San Pedro de Cardenas.
What sort of food did they give you? What sort of medical treatment or anything?
Well, I don't think it was. Well, I noted that a couple of the people that were wounded were not taken to the bull ring. They were taken to the hospital. There was a guy named George Delic, a Yugoslav guy, who was a seaman, who was pretty seriously wounded, and he wasn't one of the 4 I was with, but us. Now they started collecting us. By the time the afternoon worked on, he was taken to a hospital later. Delich. Somebody told me he was looking for me. He went back to Yugoslavia at the thing in Florence. Wasn't there some kind of deal in Florence a number of years ago?
Yes.
Somebody told me he was looking for me, and they gave me his card. I've never been to Yugoslavia, so I've never used it. I have no idea. Because later on, they brought him back. He came to San Pedro and the Cardenas, the monastery where we stayed at for a long period of time. I don't remember that they were particularly brutal. I think they were so overwhelmed, that they didn't really know what to do with us. And I can't remember that the food was particularly crappy. I mean, the food was terrible all the way through. They gave you watery soup and a little loaf of bread, and once in a while maybe you got a few sardines. Once in a while there was some garbanzos in the soup. Occasionally, sometimes there was even a piece of meat, but that was almost impossible. A lot of garlic soup, sopa d'ajo. And so we spent. I don't remember that they were particularly brutal with us because most of the people were Spanish prisoners. There were very few. Yeah, that's really nice.
How about the guards?
I don't remember in the bull ring that they were particularly brutal. See, when we got to San Pedro, it was a different story. You see, then things changed. But in this bull ring, I can't remember that I don't think they even bothered us. Because it was this big bull ring. I guess we used to go to sleep. I don't remember if we had blankets or mattresses or what. Underneath the stands is like a big concrete area. So I think we go to sleep there. And during the day, we would sit up in the stands, wander around, bullshit. There were 12 Americans there, there's a newspaper article. I went back and looked in the LA Times, in the New York Times. There was a newspaper article, and I copied it and I gave it to somebody, and I don't remember anymore because I had written a letter from the bull ring to Carney, the correspondent of the Times. I was able to get it out. One of the Spaniards apparently mailed it for me. And so he came to the bull ring, and he wrote a big long story about it in the New York Times. And I went there once and I looked it up, somewhere around March 10th, 11th, or 12th, and I copied it, and I gave it to somebody. I don't remember why, but I never got it back.
That's 38, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, you can go to, they have the Times is on microfilm. And so then they took us to San Pedro de Cardenas early in April. And that really blew our mind, you know, that we get there and here's all the guys that we knew who had gone through 15, 20, 30 days, of 15, 20 days of stuff behind the lines of, everybody had a big long story to tell about how they were finally, cut off and trying to get back and did get back and then got cut off again and, and on and on and on. And so we got there and, like old home week, I guess they thought we were all dead. Nobody, we were gone. And so that was a very joyous kind of occasion to see them alive and for them to see us alive. And then before long, we fell into a routine. We stayed there. They kept on bringing in more and more people that they claimed were internationals. Apparently what they did is they made a search of all the prisoners that they had, because they brought in like about a dozen Spaniards who had been born in the United States, who had never been, who had been born here and had come back to Spain as kids. And because they were trying to build up the number of internationals they had. If you recall, at this point in time, there was a big deal at the League of Nations, where the Spanish Republican government was complaining about all the fascists on their side, and they were complaining about the internationals. So they decided to make a showplace, and they collected all the internationals. There must have been 500 or 600 from like 30 or 40 countries. And they used to bring down people, correspondents and real people, and take pictures of us. That was not so bad, but then they started, the Gestapo came down and started looking for, I guess they were mostly looking for Germans. They individually interviewed every single person, long interviews, and took photographs and stuff like that. And I think because none of the Germans said they were Germans. They were all, they all speak more than one language. So they were from Holland, they were from some other country. Nobody admitted that they were German, though there were a number of Germans from the Talman group that had been picked up. You name it. I mean, it was every nationality.
Do you remember any of the guys?
No, I have no recollection of any of them. I hardly remember the Americans to say anything about the Germans. And actually, I guess we were pretty, what's the word I'm thinking of? Provincial. We stuck together. All the Americans, they stuck in one place. We didn't even have too much to do with the English or the other English speaking. We had one little wing that all the Americans lived in. We, though there were, there was contact. You were free to wander around. We had 2 floors that we lived in this big wing of this monastery. And most of the time they left you alone.
Were they interested in religious background or ethnic?
No, I don't think they really. I think the only thing they were really interested in to see if they could find any Germans. That's my impression. But they cross-examined. They examined us intensively, individually. These Gestapo people must have been there for a few months, and they called you in one by one. I mean, there was the brutality was kind of. It wasn't really terrible. Some of the guards would sort of have a little sport. The guy called Sticky or Tanky, I can't remember which. Like we used to have to get down the stairs to get down for our meals, So he would stand at the foot of the stairs and he had one of these, he had been wounded or something. So he had like a cane that was pretty limber, so he would just be swinging at everybody, you know. So whoever he could hit, he would hit. So you know, if you timed yourself, you try to get by without getting hurt or getting smacked. Or if you got smacked, you were traveling with the thing. There were a few, you know, serious incidents of brutality, but they were mainly provoked by stool pigeons. I mean, like I can remember one situation, some Pole went and squealed on a bunch of other Poles and said they had raped some nuns or something like that. So they took them down and they really beat the shit out of them. Some of the people tried to escape, mostly the Germans, you see. I mean, people that felt that that there was no future there for them. When they, you know, and some escaped and some were brought back. Others never brought back. We never found out whether they made it or they just got killed. But on the whole, you know, we organized things. We had schools, we had classes, we had chess tournaments, we had bridge tournaments. So we managed to get some books. I don't remember where. You know, I guess as time went on, people started sending back to the States, and stuff was sent to us. Remember, we got Red Cross packages at one point. Yeah.
When the Gestapo started questioning, did prisoners meet in any way and discuss how to deal with the questioning?
I'm sure we did. We had an organized Communist Party group in there. We put out a little newspaper, but I don't have any clear recollection of any of the details. But I know that we were very, very well organized. There were leaders from the different national groups. I mean, we were involved with some of the escape things because we had to try to get stores for them, you know. And like most of the Americans were in better shape because a family could send you money. So if you get a $5 or $10 money order, they had a little store there. You can go down and buy some can of condensed milk. You can buy some chocolate. And you know, so we were involved in getting stuff together for them, so that when they took off, they had some stuff with them that they could live on and so on. So it was a well organized situation. I'm looking forward to Carl Geis's book because there are a lot of people that have a lot of better memory than I do. My memory is just terrible. I mean, there was some really, you know, highlights that I can recall. We had a Christmas party there, for example, in which all the different national groups were entertaining. And the Cubans did, they put on the most beautiful show you ever saw. Some of them dressed up as women, and they put on, you know, one of these Cuban nightclub, you know, cha-cha dancing and stuff. There was a chorus of Slavs that were rehearsing for months. There was a song called Evening Bells. Ding dong dong dong. And when I was on a Russian ship a few years ago, the orchestra played it. I'd never heard it before. I was so excited. Apparently it's an old Slavic lullaby or something like that, Evening Bells. And so I mean, you know, you passed your time, you played cards, you sat around reading the lice. We were just lousy as hell, you know, clothes were filthy. Once in a while, they'd take you down to a river somewhere, you'd be able to wash your clothes and take a bath. There was really no toilet. I mean, the toilets were absolutely filthy. They had a couple of little holes that were always stuffed up and some little running water that you could wash in. There was really no medical attention to speak of. I know I had a really bad toothache and I couldn't get anybody to take care of it, though there were a couple of international doctors there, so for medical things, but they had no equipment and so on. The nuns that were running the place were pretty nice. You know, the leadership, see, we had a whole big thing of leadership. They had jefes and up-jefes, different national groups that were sort of self-governing kind of body. And like Carl Geiser was one of the big wheels. There was some Dutch guy who was the #1 big wheel who spoke 10 languages fluently, and they would negotiate with the leadership, the authorities that were running the camp. And I mean, the main thing we were trying to do with is corresponding, get in touch with our family, let them know where we were. I think Carney did finally come down and see us at one point, the same correspondent from the LA Times, New York Times. Finally, we finally we were taken in about January of 1939, or January, February of 1939, a group of us were taken up to San Sebastian. The story was that we were going to be traded for a bunch of Italians who had been captured by the Loyalist government and who were prisoners, and we were going to be traded. So we got to San Sebastian, and they put us in a jail there with a bunch of Basque prisoners. And the story we got later on was that Franco decided to hell with him. He wasn't going to trade anybody because the war was practically over at that point in time. So he reneged on the trade. So we stayed in this prison in San Sebastian till we were released on April 22nd. By that time, the war was already over, and I suppose the State Department and all the stuff was going on back east about our being freed and so on and so forth. So we were finally freed April 22nd. Now that was a really great experience because we were in this prison, which was a building that was like in town in San Sebastian. And I don't remember how many there were, 3 or 4 floors, hundreds of Basque prisoners. Their families used to bring them food, which they would share with us as much as they could. Some of the families, every day they'd bring them food. And we'd sit around and talk with them, and it was really a great experience, learning their songs and sit up on the roof and bullshit with them, and they were absolutely fantastic people. So finally, we were released, as I said, April 22nd. They took us down to the border, and we walked across the bridge in San Sebastian into France. And there was a representative of the State Department there. My understanding was that the Veterans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade in New York had raised all the money for our transportation and all of this stuff. So, although, believe it or not, I think they left 7 behind. The last 7 on the list, alphabetically, they had made provision for only 7 of them. Like, what the hell is the name of the guy that's the chess player? High Wallach. Didn't get released with the first group. They stayed on almost until September or something like that. And so we got across. They gave us some clean clothes, and they took some showers there, and they put us on a train, and we headed for Le Havre. That was one of the most exciting nights I ever had. They gave us some money. We were stopping and running off, buying wine, buying bread, buying cheese, buying sausage. It was a real party, all night long, heading for Le Havre. And we got to Le Havre. They put us up in some buildings there that had been built for immigrants during the big immigration period, like big barracks. There was nobody else there except us. We had a dining hall, beautiful food, and most of them took off right away. A few of us had some problems with passports, so we ended up staying over. I did, because I'd gone on a phony passport. Once I crossed the border, I was no longer Mike Goodwin, I was Henry Galerowitz. And like Rabbit, Irving Rabinowitz, he was Max Schufer. And so about half a dozen of us, well, let's see, Rabbit, myself, there were a couple of guys like George Delic, some Yugoslavs who had come to the United States, had seamen who never, weren't citizens. So we ended up spending almost a month in Le Havre before we finally were able to work out getting permission to come back to the United States. There was one very interesting guy there, a guy named Johnny, I think his name is Johnny Mura, who was a Romanian, who had been a student and had come to the United States, married an American, left and come to Spain, but apparently was not an American citizen, so he couldn't get back to the United States as an American.
Even married to an American?
Apparently, I think he had been before, but they got divorced. I don't know. Anyway, he worked, because I remember him showing us all the paperwork. He had worked out a deal that he could get into the United States on the Russian quota. Of course, the part of Romania that he was born had been Russia at that time. He apparently came from a fairly wealthy family. His family came from Romania to visit him. And he worked out this deal. I remember him showing us the maps and so on, because the Romanian quota was way, way oversubscribed. and there was nobody on the Russian quota, so he was able to get in on the Russian quota. I remember when he finally got permission, he took us out to dinner at one of the fanciest restaurants in Le Havre. I know Rabbit and maybe it was somebody else. And he went back at the same time we did, but he went first class because he didn't want to have any hassle with immigration. And he figured if he'd go first class, they would leave him alone. So that was kind of fun, just wandering around Le Havre, not doing anything. There's a tennis court. We played a little tennis. Kept riding home to get some money, go out and buy some food, buy some clothes. And so finally we got home. I remember we got home June 3rd, 1939. And that was the end of the Spanish experience. So when I got home, I went to live with my sisters. By this point in time, my two sisters had gotten divorced and they were living together. An apartment on 7th Avenue near 23rd Street. I started looking for a job. I started thinking about whether I should go back to school and things like that. And decided not to. Then I, soon after that, met somebody and ended up getting married. And so the summer of 1939, I didn't do a hell of a lot. The only thing I could really find is that's what I did. The vets were trying to organize jobs for people. So they did get me a deal where I was able to go to the Chicken Flickers Union, and the Chicken Flickers Union put me on the list. And I used to work on Thursdays. See, there are very few chicken flickers that work full time, but on Thursdays and before holidays, you need a lot of extra ones. So I used to make about $12, $13, $14 on a Thursday, which was good money. So I was working as a chicken flicker and was, active politically. And they sent me down to a UE local out in 1227 in New York on Long Island City, a guy named Gary. And he was going to try Jim Gary. He was going to try to get people jobs. And so I used to go out and we used to do some picket work with him and, on some strikes and so on. And it was really funny. Meanwhile, I decided to get married. I got married on March 3rd, 1940. I still didn't have a steady job, but that week I got a job. I got a job at a sheet metal shop. Well, it was a shop that built radio chassis and stuff like that on March 3rd in Long Island City called Palm Metal Products. It was a UE shop, and I got a job there as a helper. And that was the beginning of my sheet metal career. And so I was active in the union there, and I was active in the party.
Were you harassed at any time during that time?
Not at that point in time. Actually, very little harassment at all in my whole life. I got one experience that's the really funniest experience in about 1952, 53. I was working in a shop in Compton, California. It was a sheet metal shop, and I was like the shop floor. We used to mostly do shop work. So we got a job to build something for North American. It's a big silencer for jet engines. This is the beginning of jet engines. It's a great big long thing. So I come in on Saturday morning. He wanted us to work this weekend. So I come in Saturday morning. The whole crew was working. It's a small shop, a dozen people. And the guy, the supervisor, comes over to me and says, "We got orders now to install this. We're going to go out Sunday and install it. We got to get it work as late as we can Saturday to get it all ready and go out and put it together on Sunday." So he says, "I want you and 3 other guys to go out." "Who are the other 3 guys?" I said, "Okay, me, this guy, and this guy." This is like 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning. 11 o'clock in the morning, he comes over to me. He says, "You know what? They won't give you a clearance to go to work there." I mean, it was the most amazing thing in the world. And something about Spain or something like that. I said, yes. I told him, what happened. And so I didn't go to work. They didn't fire me. Monday, one of the general managers, it was a fairly big company, the general manager came over to me and told me that the owner was probably going to fire me because he was a real conservative guy. And this guy was telling me what a strong supporter of Spain he had been. But They never did fire me because I was really a good worker, and they made a lot of money off of me. That was actually the only time, I mean, I had FBI come and visit me at different times, but I guess there was an experience when I went into the Navy where at one point in time they questioned me about spelling, but I really that didn't seem to affect what I was able to do.
What did you, after beginning, let's say, the beginning of the Second World War, where were you?
Well, I was going to come, so I got to work in this Palm Metal place as a sheet metal helper. And in 1940, they came up with some national defense training program where they were going to train people for jobs. So I went down to sign up for that, and I wanted to be a machinist. As a matter of fact, I was going to school to learn to be a machinist, and they said, well, they can't sign me up for the machinist program, but since I'm working in a sheet metal shop, they can put me in a sheet metal program. So they put me in an aviation sheet metal program, 5 nights a week, 4 hours a night for 10 weeks. This was the summer of 1940.
Learning what?
Learning what they called aviation sheet metal. It was ridiculous. You made a little something, you did a little riveting, but at least I learned a little bit about tools. See, the shop I was working in, I was really a helper. All I did was stacking metal on off the shear. And then in the early 1941, my wife got offered a job with the Social Security program in Baltimore. See, after I finished this sheet metal program, there was no place you can get a job in New York City. There was no such thing as aircraft plants near New York. So we went to Baltimore, and I can't remember which. We even stayed at a vet's house the first night we were there. And this guy was working at Glen Martin. I can't remember his name. So he said, oh, I had this fancy certificate that I was an aircraft sheet metal worker, so I went out to Glen Martin, and they said they had no work. There was a material shortage. So they had an ad in the paper for the shipyards. So I went out to the shipyards, Maryland Dry Dock, and the guy hired me right on the spot. And I think Norm Dorland, and Carl Bradley were the two vets, were the big wheels in the Union. So I went to work in the shipyard as a sheet metal helper, and stayed working in the sheet metal yard, being very active in the Union. As a matter of fact, there was a Union meeting on Pearl Harbor Day. When they bombed Pearl Harbor, December 7th, we had a Union meeting that night, and I was elected on a delegate to go down to Washington. Who the hell was the name of our congressman, our senator? We were gonna protest to our senator about some anti-labor bills were going on. So we went the next day.
Douglas?
No, it was some guy from Maryland. I can't remember his name now. And so we went to Washington, and we saw Roosevelt driving to the Capitol to make his speech for the Declaration of War the next morning. So I continued working in the sheet metal shop there in the shipyards until the end of 1941, after Pearl Harbor. Then we moved back to New York, and I got a job working in the shipyards in New York, and I worked in they called it Robbins Dry Dock. It was later Todd Deary Basin. I was a sheet metal worker there, and I kept working there until I decided I was going to go into the service. And I ended up volunteering. By that point in time, we decided before I was going to go, we were going to have a child. So we went through, and I had my first kid was born in April of 1943. And I had an appendectomy in November or something of 1942. It was really funny because they were threatening they were going to take away my draft status, And I said I didn't care because I was just waiting, till my kid was a few months old and I was going to enlist. The guy's mouth fell over, he couldn't believe it. And so I did, and I enlisted in the Navy. That way I was able to get a rating. I enlisted as the equivalent of a sergeant because I had a wife and a child. The extra $50 a month you made was big money. So I enlisted into the what they call the ship repair unit. No, I'm sorry, I enlisted in the Seabees. That's what it was. They were taking Seabees, and I was a craftsman. I was a sheet metal worker, and so they took me into the Seabees as a third-class metalsmith. They called it something else at that time. And they sent me to boot camp in Norfolk somewhere. Norfolk, and I was there for about 4 weeks. And boot training, and then I volunteered for a ship repair unit. This is what they were doing then. They were organizing the ship repair unit. And so I volunteered for that because I wanted to get sent out, and it worked. I got transferred to the ship repair unit, and they sent me to New Orleans for a while. Then from there, I got transferred to a ship. I was put on a converted LST repair ship called the USS Egeria, ARL-8. And as
What did that unit do?
we used to actually, well, we were supposed to be designed to repair landing craft. You know, these little, this converted LST that welded up the bow, the whole tank deck was converted into shops. And we had about 200 craftsmen on board the ship, sheet metal, ship fitters, machinists, electricians, radar, all kinds of craftspeople, carpenters and so on. And we were supposed to be able to do emergency repairs for ships. They had spare engines. I mean, this was mostly for these small landing craft. It ended up, actually, we ended up doing a hell of a lot of work on stuff as big as destroyers. We even worked on a cruiser once because they sent us out to the Pacific, and we went in on a number of invasions. And so actually, I vaguely remember at Camp Perry when I was first there, getting somebody raising with me my having been in Spain. But I don't know, maybe because of the fact that I didn't get drafted and I didn't come in, I came in with a specific job, with a specific rating, and I guess at that point they didn't know anything about Spain. I didn't remember that they asked me, because I volunteered specifically for the Seabees, and I went in that way, and so they no, but somebody did ask me about it and made some comments, but as I say, it didn't stop them from me getting into the ship repair unit and getting.
So you never had any harassment from them at all?
No harassment.
All did?
No. Just in this one person that questioned me and mentioned the fact that he knew what I did in Spain. And it kind of is interesting. I think he was asking me what happened, some of my experiences. So I was a sheet metal worker. We called us a metalsmith on board the ship, and we commissioned the ship in Baltimore. We went up to Philadelphia and got outfitted, and we headed around the canal, went to San Diego, headed for Pearl Harbor, and made the invasion. The first one we went on, I think, was the invasion of Guam. Then we made the invasion of Saipan. We made the invasion of Leyte. Then we went on another invasion in Luzon.
Did your ship ever get hit?
No, but we had ships next to us, guys.
You had one?
The only time anybody got injured on the ship was when we were coming back after the war was almost over. We had these quad 40mm guns, and two guys were sitting on the bow, and the captain decided he's going to shoot up all the rusty ammunition that was laying inside the turret. So they had target practice. We were out in the middle of the sea now somewhere. This was in already June, after Okinawa had been secured. So they had target practice, and after the target practice, the gunner's mate went down to clean out the gun. So two guys were sitting up in the bow, and this guy took the things and wound it down. And as he wound it down, apparently one of the rounds had got hung up inside the thing and discharged. Those were the only casualties we had in the entire time.
Did you get killed?
One guy got killed and one guy got his leg blown off or something.
Did your unit get sighted or anything?
Not really. I don't know if we ever got sighted, but we were in the Leyte Gulf and Okinawa for a long period of time during this whole kamikaze business.
But you got all the battle stars for the various.
Oh yeah, I got all those Oakley clusters and stuff for all the time, because we went into the Leyte and to the Okinawa invasion like D-Day -6 or something like that.
What did you wind up with medal-wise? Did they give you?
I didn't get any special. I don't know.
Medal?
I mean, all the things that everybody gets for being in those arenas and stuff like that. I don't know. Apparently, I got enough of them because I had enough points to get out pretty early on, as soon as the point system came. Pretty early when the point system came out. But in Leyte is when they started these kamikaze. And in the beginning, what we would do is we would shoot at them. Whenever planes...
Kamikaze was the suicide
Suicide planes, yeah.
planes that would crash right into the
Into the
ships.
ship. See, and we did have one, we were working on an LCI one time, a landing craft infantry, which is a fairly good sized ship, and it was tied up alongside of us, and a kamikaze came in and dived right into the LCI. I mean, it was tied up to us, right into the stern, back end of the LCI. And so we quickly unhooked it and took it and beached it because it was getting ready to sink. And I think, I don't remember now, a couple of guys got killed in that thing. It wasn't our crew, though, it was the crew of the LCI. But what they started to do is, instead of firing at the planes, they found out that was not unproductive, because if you shoot at them, they'd come in and follow your tracer bullets and locate the ships. So what they did is they made smoke. We used to sit out there, and they would, I don't know how many barrels of oil, smoke oil, the oil they used for making smoke, they burned in Leyte Gulf and in Okinawa. Because the minute there was an air raid, any warning, they'd start making smoke. They'd take these little landing craft, and they had little machines on them, and they'd go all around the harbor, and the place was just floating with smoke, and you just sit there. And they found that was the most effective way of keeping them from diving at you. Because it was, it was full of supply ships and hospital ships. I mean, after a while, they'd bring in big repair ships. See, we came in early because we were kind of expendable. The really big repair ships, crews of 1,000, 2,000 people, they didn't come in until much later. And so after the invasion of Okinawa, we went back to Pearl Harbor. And we had been out for about almost 18 months, and the ship needed, cleaning up and stuff. And I had kind of cute experience there. I was on the way back. See, these were all tradespeople, So they had a whole list of classes in Pearl Harbor. They said, who wants to go to school in Pearl Harbor and learn something? So I'm the only guy in the ship out of 200 guys that signed up. I signed up to learn welding. So we get to Pearl Harbor. Everybody says, hell no, we haven't been off the ship. I just want liberty. I'm not going to school. So we get to Pearl Harbor. I didn't do a bit of work in Pearl Harbor. Everybody else was over the side, scraping, cleaning bilges, standing watches. We got to Pearl Harbor. I went to school 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock. Didn't stand any watches 5 days a week, and had liberty all the rest of the time.
Oh, you weren't stationed at the school. You were stationed.
No, I was stationed on the ship.
Oh.
The school was part of the Pearl Harbor Navy Yard, and so they said, I get up in the morning, have breakfast, go over to the school, work all day welding, come back, change my clothes, and go ashore. And so after a while, then the war ended while we were in Pearl Harbor. I mean, the war with Japan helped, and I ended up getting transferred off of that ship and put on a ADP, which is a converted DE, a destroyer escort. And that had just come out from the States. It was a new ship. They put me on it. By this time I was a metalsmith first class, which was like a top sergeant kind of thing. And it's crazy because I didn't know what the hell to do on the ship. I was supposed to do all the repair work. A steam line broke on board the ship with 400 pounds pressure. I know how to weld a little bit, but I wasn't a welder, so I got a mess cook. A guy who was a mess cook, who was a welder, who I got drafted. I got him to do the welding for me. And
One left like a machinist mate on that ship.
You're
doing all the repairs.
Well, I didn't do that kind of repairs, but I was supposed to be able to do welding. And that's what a metalsmith is supposed to be able to do. I was the only supposed to be the welder on board the ship. And so this steam line had needed some welding. And I wasn't going to take a chance and try to weld that. So we went back out again. As a matter of fact, we went clear to Japan. I don't remember where, but somewhere in northern Japan, we went in with a bunch of small ships that were doing minesweeping. Like we were the mothership for these minesweepers. And that's something I'll don't forgive that son of a bitch. The captain wouldn't let us go ashore. There were no troops on land. The war had just ended. All these other ships, crews went ashore every night. Greatest liberty you ever can see. And the captain wouldn't let us go ashore. People went over the hill. They took rowboats and they swam in anything to get ashore. But I didn't do things like that. So finally, about September of 1945, there was enough, the point system came out, and I had enough points to get off. So they transferred me off got on a troop ship, came to Seattle, got on a train, went to New York, got discharged. And that was the end of my military career. Went back to work at the shipyards for a few months. Kicked around the idea of whether I should go back to school and get an engineering degree. Decided I wasn't going to do it because I was do as well as a sheet metal worker as I could as an engineer. More, I was making $80 a week, and the story was if I got to school and got to be an engineer, I could make 35.
You know, I'd just like to go through a couple
Okay, fine.
things because the interview is ostensibly over. On George Derlich, he's the one that was...
George Delich, D-E-L-I-C-H.
Delich, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he's the one who... How about Ed Flegel?
Ed Flegel was in the battalion. The last I knew, he was the mailman for the Lincoln Wash Battalion. I never saw him again until sometime in the 1950s. I was a sheet metal estimator, and I go to some contractor's office, and here's this guy who was a drywall contractor taking off the drywall. He's going to bid the drywall, and it was Ed Flegel. He had a business somewhere down in Orange County. And he was completely apolitical, and I got his name and address, and I think we wrote to him for a while, and never came around, and I don't think we ever got any contact with him.
Okay, Dykstra was killed.
I'm not sure his name is Dykstra.
What is...
You got the art book there? Let me see.
Is he mentioned in the art book?
Yeah, oh sure he's mentioned. The whole story is mentioned about him getting killed there. It was the stupidest thing you ever saw. I mean, this guy, the 491, Matthew Dykstra. Is that him? No, I don't. That's a different. I got his name wrong. Matthew Dykstra, the guy who was taken prisoner, but it's something like that. All I remember is that he was he's in here. He was the battalion commander. He was one of the guys who had maybe Detro.
Oh, Detro, yeah.
Philip Detro, that's it.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that on.
Yeah, Philip Detro, yeah, he was the guy that was...
Okay, that's it, unless you have anything else you want to say.
Well, I don't know, I can't remember, anything special. If you got any questions on it.
You want to...
Details, you still got more tape?
Yeah, just a little more.
A little more.
That's not the
One at a time.
problem, no problem.
Okay? Yeah, a little story that I forgot that I was going to talk about. When I got back to Le Havre and met Johnny Muir, I was telling you about his maneuvering to get back in the United States. He told me this story. When I went to Spain, I was not quite 21. My two sisters, who were both older than I, very devoted women, radical left-wing people, this Johnny Muir told me this story. He said he was stationed in Albacete for a good deal of the time. He speaks all the different languages, and he was in Albacete. So my sisters decided, after I'd been in Spain for a couple of months, hearing about people getting killed and things like that, that maybe they made a mistake. So they sat down, they wrote a letter to Prieto, who was at that time the Minister of Defense, and about how their poor brother, who was underage, had gone to Spain, and he really should send him home. So Johnny Muir says that all he knows is he suddenly gets an order from Prieto to send me back to the States. The order comes in, he looks at it, he says, well, if Prieto gave that order, this guy must be a no-good son of a bitch. He tears it up and throws it away. That's his story. I assume it's true. I don't know, because my sister did confirm.
He thinks that Prieto's no goddamn good.
Well,
No.
Prieto was, there was a lot of differences with Prieto. He was, did a lot of things that a lot of people were very unhappy with.
And he got removed later on. But
Yeah, but not till much later. But at this point in time, he was the Minister of Defense, and apparently Johnny Muir figured if Prieto wants this guy to go back, he's not going to cooperate. Anyway, that was, I thought, a kind of cute story, and I keep thinking back, look at little things that have influence on your life.
On life or
I
something.
mean, here I could have gone back, never taken prisoner, who knows? Anyway, that's the little story I thought of.
3616.